Woo! We're doing church now. Yes, we are. James Albright and Vukeka Nuvi Scholes, you guys are awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah. It is 2013. And we are living the empowered life in 2013. That is our theme for the entire year, living the empowered life. The empowered life is when you accept and claim and live from the power of the divine in you. It's called empowered because you accept and know that the power comes from within. It's the divine presence of God or the Christ nature. It's your true authentic self, and it's within you. It's not giving our power to the outer circumstances of the world. So we're going to be exploring what it means to truly triumph in our lives as we live the empowered life this year. And every month we have a particular theme to help us stay on track. The theme of January is purpose. Purpose. And we have an affirmation that goes along with this theme of purpose, and the words are behind me on the screens here. Let's speak this together. I am on purpose. Every step I take brings me closer to my dreams. Now, if it's comfortable for you, would you stand so we can speak this standing? Because when you take a stand for something, right? When you take a stand for something, then absolutely we are on purpose together. Let's speak it one more time. I am on purpose. Every step I take brings me closer to my dreams. Yes. All right. Have a seat. That's good. Awesome. So last week, as we explored this notion of living life on purpose, we said that when you live life on purpose, you have a life of integrity. You are clear and focused. Moment to moment, you know what your purpose is. You know why you are here. And last week, we talked about how you can create a mission statement for your life, a purpose statement for your life, a statement that is an overall guiding statement for how you will live moment to moment, as well as how you will live in a big picture perspective. And I invited you to write your statements down and send them to me. And I want to share with you some of the statements that came in. These are powerful, powerful statements. I will build a foundation for children through education by inspiring, learning. Let me say this again. I will build a foundation for children through education by inspiring learning, motivating creativity, and affirming self-potential in all students. It's a powerful statement. This person sent me both her vision and her mission statement. Her vision for the world, the highest dream she has for the world, is for the whole world to know that they are love incarnate. That's beautiful. And then her mission statement is this: I am love in action. I uplift, educate, and inspire myself and others. And I want to share one more with you. I am 100% responsible for peace in this world, and therefore commit my life to being a loving force in all I do and say from this day forth. Those are powerful words. And here's the thing about having a mission statement or a purpose statement. The words become magnetic, and they draw to you the resources of the infinite universe. And I was looking in the book, The Path by Lori Beth Jones, and she says 3 things about your mission statement. Number 1, it should be one sentence. You should be able to recite it under any circumstance. And number 3, it should be understood by a 12-year-old. In other words, it should be so clear that anyone you speak it to will understand. So clear that anyone you speak it to will understand. So if you're catching up with us, listen to last week's lesson online, or you can pick up a copy of the CD, because there are questions that I gave you to guide you in writing your mission or your purpose statement. Go online on our Facebook account, and right there on our Facebook page, you can write your mission statement for others to see. As you declare it, it takes on power. As you declare it, it takes on power. So, last week, actually it's been a couple weeks ago, my husband and I went to see the movie Lincoln. Any of you seen that movie? Raise your hand. Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? It's pretty powerful. And I don't know about you, but I thought I was going to see a biography of Lincoln's whole life, so I thought they were going to start when he was born in the log cabin, and move all the way up. But it's only the last 4 years of his life. It's that period of time right before the Civil War ends when he was aggressively pursuing the ratification of the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery forever. And what you get to see as you watch this portrayal of 4 months of his life is how purposeful he was about enacting that amendment. And it was not an easy enactment at all. He knew that he needed to enact that amendment before the Civil War ended, because he believed that if he did not, then the war would end and people would just go back to their old ways of being. And so he was absolutely convicted and committed. And spoiler alert, put your hands in your ears here, Lincoln dies. Yeah, a week after the Civil War ended, he is shot. And here's the compelling question that stayed with me since that film. You see, the film shows what a profound leader he was, how inspiring he was, how even though he had no formal education, he was a very learned man, very well read. He was a brilliant man and a powerful leader. And so the question that stayed with me was, how would the world be different today if he had not been shot? How would your and my life be different today if he had been able to oversee the Reconstruction after the Civil War, which tore our country apart? I mean, just imagine how things would be different. And on this weekend, where we celebrate the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., I have that same question about him. He was shot at the age of 39 years old. Just imagine if he lived another 10 years, or 20 or 30 or even 40. Imagine if he lived to be 79 years old. How would our country be different today if that man and his leadership had carried on? Well, let me share with you a few things about Martin Luther King Jr. Because if ever there was a purposeful man, it was he. He was born January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. And you may or may not know that he was born Michael King Jr. And after his family went to Germany and were introduced to Martin Luther, his father changed his name. His father changed his name to Martin Luther King Sr. and then changed Martin Luther King Jr.'s name as well at that time. King was so bright that he skipped the 9th and the 12th grades and entered Morehouse College when he was only 15. He received a bachelor's in sociology and went on then to get his master's and his doctorate in theology in 1955. King was a Baptist minister, and this amazes me. At the age of 25, he took his first church, the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Now, think back with me to when you were 25. Some of you will have to think longer and harder than others. Some of you don't have to think long at all because you are 25 or you're about to be 25. So think about that time. Imagine being the lead minister of a church at 25. And then within the next year, Rosa Parks in Montgomery, Alabama, decides that she is not going to give up her seat to a Caucasian man. She's African American. She was asked to give up her seat and she refused. And from that bold step on her part, Dr. Martin Luther King then led the Montgomery bus boycott. Now, you may or may not remember the details of that, so let me share it with you. For 385 days, the African Americans in Montgomery did not ride the bus. And eventually, as a result of their nonviolent protest, the law was changed and the buses were desegregated in Montgomery, Alabama. And the leader of this boycott, the leader of this cause, was a 26-year-old man named Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The thing that impresses me about this is that you never know when your moment is going to come. He was launched into the spotlight through that. There were many other civil rights leaders, and he was the one who went to the forefront because of that experience. He could never have dreamed that Rosa Parks would do what she would do, that through his belief and practice in nonviolence, he would be able to lead and sustain a boycott for 385 days. And yet, when the moment came, he was ready and he was prepared. He went on throughout his leadership to be arrested 30 times for participation in civil rights activities. In 1963, he led the March on Washington. In 1964, he was the youngest person ever to win the Nobel Peace Prize for his work to end racial segregation and discrimination through civil disobedience and nonviolence. And then on April 4th, 1968, at 6:01 p.m., he was assassinated while standing on the balcony of a Lorraine motel in Memphis, Tennessee. Folks, he was only 39 years old. Imagine where we'd be if we'd had his leadership and his commitment to continue on. Well, what was King's purpose? You know, we're talking about purpose in this month of January. Wonder what his stated mission statement was. In all of his eloquence, I wasn't able to find a concise statement that he called his mission, but let me share what some authors have said about him. One said, the liberation of mankind and the elimination of injustices. That was his mission, the liberation of mankind and the elimination of injustices. Another said, to bring about racial equality, nonviolence, and social justice. And many have said, to serve others. In fact, let me read to you from one of his speeches. This speech was given, it's called the Drum Major Instinct Sermon. And he's speaking about the day when he might leave, when he might die, because he lived with death as an imminent possibility all of his adult life. He said, if any of you are around when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver a eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. And I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. And then, of course, there was his legendary I Have a Dream speech, and I want to share just one line from that. Perhaps this was his ultimate purpose. He says, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will be judged not by their color, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Well, I don't know what he would have said was his mission directly, but he embodied it. Who he was spoke louder than his words, and his words were eloquent. Yesterday, I had the privilege of attending the Johnson County NAACP chapter celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday. And in his introductory, there was a wonderful, wonderful celebration. There were inspiring speeches and lots of performances by children from, just little toddlers all the way up through the teens. And at one point, Dr. Tom Trigg, who is the superintendent of the Blue Valley School District, was introducing our keynote speaker. And Dr. Trigg said something that really stayed with me. He said, we all have opportunities. Our role is to be available and prepared when those opportunities come. He said, I don't believe in coincidences. And you know what? I don't either. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that we do all have opportunities and that our role is to be available and to be prepared when they come. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. couldn't have foreseen exactly what was going to come down the pike, could he? At such a young age. And yet, when the moment came for him to take a stand, he took a stand, and it thrust him into the national and international limelight. And you and I were always being prepared, right? We just don't know when the moment's going to come. Our keynote speaker yesterday, Leo Morton, who is the chancellor of UMKC, do you know that a week before he was offered that job as the chancellor of UMKC, he had never even thought about it, never even considered it. But then the opportunity was there, and he said yes. Or maybe you remember that flight, that U.S. Airways flight led by Captain Sully Sullenberger back in 2009, Flight 1549, that took off from New York's LaGuardia Airport and lost power just 3 minutes out of the airport. Now, where do you land a plane, right? Where do you land a plane 3 minutes out of LaGuardia Airport? There was no safe place to land it. But he did. He landed on the Hudson River, right? He landed that plane safely on the Hudson River. It's become called the Miracle on the Hudson, and all 155 of those passengers survived. I heard in an interview with Captain Sullenberger that he believed that every moment of his life up to that point prepared him for that. He was prepared. So you and I, we're being prepared too. We may not know for what. You see, that's the whole point of this, is that you don't know what you're being prepared for. It's only in retrospect that you can look back at your life and see how one experience played into another to another. But our jobs are to show up in preparation. There's a wonderful parable in the Bible. It's in the book of Matthew, chapter 25. And it's the parable of the 10 bridesmaids, or the 10 virgins. And the story goes like this. These 10 bridesmaids were waiting on the bridegroom to come and take them to the wedding. And they had all brought their lamps filled with oil, and you understand that oil was an expensive thing to have back then. They had all brought their lamps filled with oil, and 5 of these bridesmaids had actually brought with them extra oil, which turned out to be a good thing because the bridegroom was detained. And all the bridesmaids went to sleep. And when the bridegroom finally arrived and woke them up, the 5 who had not brought any extra oil, their lamps were empty now. And they asked the others if they would share their oil, and they said, no, we don't have enough to do that. So the bridegroom took only the 5 with the lamps of oil to the wedding. Now, this story's been interpreted many ways. It's sometimes seen as some future time when Jesus Christ may come back, and only those who are ready will be taken with him to heaven. But I'd like to look at it from a different perspective today. I'd like to look at it as the opportunity that you and I have to prepare for every moment, to prepare for the moments when we have to call upon our inner Christ nature, that power within us, when we really need to call on that power to show up in the world. And will we be prepared for that? You see, oil can represent spiritual wisdom. And what do you do to grow your spiritual wisdom but spiritual practice? So will we be prepared? Will you be prepared when those moments come to you? And you can't know today what they will be, what those moments might be. So I want to talk with you today about how do you get prepared for the moments? And you don't know what those moments might be. It might be that you're being prepared right now for a conversation you're going to have with somebody that you love. It might be that you're being prepared right now for marriage someday, and you don't even know that. So here's the thing. There's 4 steps I want to share with you today. And the first step to being prepared when the moment comes, when the big moment comes, is to show up. Now, that might sound like that's self-evident, but what I want to suggest to you is that it's not. You're invited to show up for every moment of your life, whether it's a challenge or whether it's a triumph. You show up fully because in the act of your showing up, you are being prepared for the next moment. Every moment has that opportunity. You see, God is preparing you even when you don't know you're being prepared. It's only with 20/20 hindsight when you look back at your life and you can see how a certain experience made a difference. I'll share with you that when I look back at my life, I can see how I was being prepared to become a minister and never knew it. I mean, bless Brian's heart, he certainly didn't marry someone thinking she was going to become a minister. That was on nobody's radar screen. And I look back, though, at how it was that somehow God was preparing me for pastoral care even before I knew it. You know, when I was just a teenager, I would ride my bike over to the nursing home where my grandmother was because I was the only one that she would eat for. So I would go and feed her lunch. And I kept finding myself throughout my life at the bedsides of people who others couldn't quite reach for one reason or another. The person wasn't able to communicate or really articulate what was going on for them, and somehow I was there. I was there when my mother was having panic attacks, and others couldn't quite communicate with her, but somehow there in my 20s, I flew down to Florida and I was able to make that connection. And God kept placing me in those kinds of circumstances, one after the other. I didn't know I was being prepared for anything at that point. And then, you know, my first career was in banking. I never intended to go into banking. It was not my dream to do that. I wanted to be a training director. I didn't care where I did it, but I wanted to help train people in communication skills and in leadership skills and supervisory skills, that kind of thing. Well, there I ended up in a bank. Not training anymore, but managing a number of branches and so forth. And what did that do? But that gave me financial experience. I got to manage people and budgets and all preparing me to be here in this community with you and other things too. And I know your life's the same way. You can look back and see how experiences that you had were preparing you. So the number one step to being prepared is to show up. For whatever's in front of you, to show up fully and give yourself to it. And even if what's in front of you right now is a dark night of the soul experience, if what's in front of you right now is testing you to your extremity, you show up for that. As you move through that, you're making preparation. You're being prepared for some moment that you do not even know about just yet. So step number one is to show up. Now step number two is to do your spiritual work. You know, when we look at Martin Luther King Jr., we know that he was a person who did his spiritual work. He was a minister. He had a PhD in theology. And let me read to you his words. He said, "And I know this God enough to know that he's with us. I've come to believe in prayer stronger than ever before since I've been in Montgomery. And I'm convinced that when we engage in prayer, we are not engaging in just the process of auto-suggestion, just an endless soliloquy or monologue, but we are engaged in a dialogue. And we're talking with a Father who's concerned about us. And I've come to believe that I have felt his power working in my life so many instances. And I've felt an inner sense of calmness in dark and difficult situations, an inner strength I never knew I had." So if you want to be prepared for the opportunity to make an impact on the world and in your life, do your spiritual work, whatever that looks like. Take your time to pray. Pray for the people that you care about. Take that time to pray for God to guide you, to give you the steps that you are to take in your life. Take your time in meditation. Take your time coming to church and being in a positive community of people that will hold the faith for you. Read books and listen to messages that inspire you. All of that is doing your spiritual work. And that is so key. You know, what you're really doing here is strengthening your core, right? You're strengthening the core of who you are. And that brings us to step number 3. Some of you are not going to like me when I tell you this next step. Step number 3 is to grow your commitment muscles. Grow your commitment muscles, your ability to make and keep commitments in life. Some of you were lucky enough to grow up in a home where when you made a commitment as a child, your parents made you keep it. And I know that there's some kids in the room right now who think that you've got the meanest parents in the world because they won't let you off the hook. When you put your name on something, when you sign up to be on the soccer team for the term, you have to keep that commitment, even if you want to drop it. But I'm telling you, your parents are doing you a favor because they're helping you to grow your commitment muscles so that if you can make a commitment now, then you'll be able to make a stronger commitment later. Martin Luther King Jr. was committed. Abraham Lincoln was committed. And so we want to grow our muscles. And it is like a muscle because, you know, you lift a 10-pound weight today, and before long you'll be able to lift the 15-pound weights and then the 20-pound weights, right? You're strengthening the core of who you are. And I want to invite everybody to join with the staff as we work on our core, because every morning we pray in at 9 o'clock. We do our spiritual practice, but before we do our spiritual practice, now at 8:55, we get down on the floor of the Peace Chapel and we're doing what's called planks. Some of you know what planks are, some of you don't know. It's basically you get down almost in a push-up position on your toes, and I would model it for you, but it wouldn't be too graceful in a skirt. So anyway, but the idea is you elevate yourself, you stay basically parallel with the floor, and you are strengthening your core muscle. We're doing that as a staff together, focusing on our health and well-being. And what you do when you practice commitment is you strengthen the core of who you are. So I want to invite you and tell you that the way that you can strengthen your commitment muscles, because some of you know that you're not real good at commitment. And sometimes we laugh. We say, oh, you know what? That person, they can't commit to a relationship. They'll never commit to marriage. But I disagree. We can all learn commitment. Commitment is learned. It doesn't come naturally. It's learned. If it hasn't been modeled for you, then now's the time to learn it. So you start by making a simple commitment. Commit that there's something that you will do every day for the next 30 days. And it can make it simple. Maybe it's praying the prayer for protection every day. Something you know you can achieve, but do it every single day for 30 days. Maybe it's making your bed every day. I don't know what it might be for you. Make it something that's doable but stretches you just a bit. Because when you have met a commitment, do you know how good that feels? It feels really good. And when you've met a big commitment, you are stronger because of it and you are prepared to make the next commitment. Martin Luther King Jr. did not get to where he was by not making big commitments in life. And where would we be if he had not done that? So you want to grow your commitment muscles, and I know that you can do that. The other aspect of this, developing your commitment muscles, is committing to practice. Whatever your practice might be. You know, they say a soloist gets to be an overnight phenomenon after 30 years of practice. It looks easy. You hear the stories, overnight. But there was preparation happening there. So let's say that you want to be married someday. So you do the work to prepare yourself for it. Don't wait till the partner's in your midst. You do the work to prepare for it now. I don't know what your practice might be that you need to do the practice, as far as preparation goes. Only you know. But always be preparing yourself. Always be growing and working on yourself so that you're prepared when you're the one piloting that plane someday, that metaphorical plane. All right, so we've been through 3 steps now. Show up. Do your spiritual practice, grow your commitment muscles. And that brings us now to the fourth. And that's to pray to be a blessing. Pray to be a blessing. Yesterday, when I was at the celebration honoring Martin Luther King Jr., Chancellor Leo Morton, UMKC Chancellor Leo Morton, said that there's a prayer that he prays every day. You might want to write this prayer down. It's simple. It's, God, bless me to be a blessing. God, bless me to be a blessing. And if you pray that prayer, then you will be placed right where you need to be when you are prepared to answer the call of the moment. God, bless me to be a blessing. Will you say that with me? God, bless me to be a blessing. Martin Luther King Jr. said it's always the right time to do the right thing. And so we prepare ourselves to be able to do the right thing. One of the most profound things that he ever said was, history will have to record that the greatest tragedy of this period of social transition was not the strident clamor of the bad people, but the appalling silence of the good people. You see, it takes courage and it takes preparation to speak our truth in the world, to be the blessing that we're called to be. But I know that each of you is that blessing waiting to happen. So let's take a moment to just turn within right now. Dear God, bless me that I might be a blessing to this world. Dear God, be the strength and the courage in me to make the commitments that matter in this world. Be the abiding presence that reminds me that I am always one with you, God, and through you with all creation. And I pray, God, that you place me where I might be a blessing. I let go of fear. I let go of small thinking. And I am ready. I am prepared. Call and I will answer. Bless me, God, to be a blessing. Bless me, God, to be a blessing to my family and my friends and loved ones. And bless me, God, to be a blessing to the people that I work with and my neighbors that I live beside. And bless me, God, to be a blessing to this world. Bless me, God, that I might be a blessing to the world. Amen. God bless you.